Well, if I could have your attention, and if you could move back to the middle, ideally. If you haven't finished eating, you can, I guess, finish eating. But we are going to keep moving, try to keep on schedule. And so, Lizzie, could you stand up? This is the caterer, so can we say thank you to her? All right. So this is Alaska Lizzie. So if you have an event, track her down. She does a great job. So, all right. I do want to. People are asking if you have cards, Lizzie. Do you have cards?
I do not. I'm on social media as Alaska Lizzie everywhere.
Alaska Lizzie social media. All right. You can track her down that way. I want to mention, as you're moving, I want to mention a couple things. One, I am on the board of the Fairbanks Food Bank, and you're going to hear from Ann Weaver, the CEO. She'll be the last speaker. I'll hop back up after she's done and wrap it up. But we've got a couple more speakers. We got an interview, and then Tom, and then Ann. So, but we are moving to the interview next. But before we do that, just want to mention a couple things. One is the Fairbanks Food Bank is a wonderful organization, and today is a gift, and we give it to the community. But if I think generosity sparks generosity. If you wanted to give to something, we would encourage you to give to the Fairbanks Food Bank. They've been doing it for decades, receiving food in this community and turning around and giving it to those who need it. We have a strong partnership with them. This particular distribution point here at Journey, this year we crossed 1 million pounds that they gave to us that we turned around and gave to the community. And so that's pretty exciting. I know some of the guys here from First Presbyterian, they're right in the thick of all of that and doing that as well, and several other churches. So we commend all the partners on that. If you wanted to give to the Fairbanks Food Bank, there is a little laptop thing out on the Welcome Center that Ann set up. You can come talk to Ann Weaver. You can go to the website. But it is a wonderful organization. As somebody who does kind of see the inner workings in the board meetings, I just can't speak highly enough about what Ann and Sam and Bo and all that they're doing, that whole team over there. So I just wanted you to know that we do try to bless them in this day and encourage you to consider that. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and have Jeff and Nicole come on up, and we'll do our interview. Let's welcome them. And I thought it would be fun to interview a husband and wife who both have the gift of leadership. And so make sure your microphones are on.
I was supposed to help her. Oh. We talked about this.
Okay, failure. All right. Well, there's a price to be paid later, Jeff. I hate to break you that. I've been married 30 years. So anyway, all right. Well, as the flyer says, so they're both in leadership, but in very different organizations. And how about you just each tell what you do with your organization? We'll start with that, and then I have a list of questions. But go ahead.
Sure. I'm Nicole Welch.
Can you hit the...
He's made up for it.
All right. Recovery.
I'm Nicole Welch. I am the Chief Human Resource Officer for Fairbanks Memorial Hospital, or maybe otherwise known as Foundation Health Partners. I've been with the organization for coming on 25 years, all in the area of human resources. I've had the opportunity to do a variety of jobs there, and I moved into the chief job in 2015. It's been quite the journey, a lot of learning in leadership and with people, and so I feel like I have some things I could share.
I'm Jeff Welch. I own Dateline Digital Printing, and I also own Jeff Welch Consulting. We were listening to Dave talk about, he was sort of listing off all these jobs that he had, and I told Nicole, I said, I think I've had 2 jobs. I think that's it. I've been owned Dateline for about 20 years now, and have been connected to Dateline for 20 lots. And so I guess that's just part of getting old, though, is that those numbers start to stack up. But so I lead a small team at Dateline, and then work with leaders and small business owners in a coaching capacity as well.
All right. And as we're doing this, if you have questions for them, we will have a little time at the end. You can text those questions to me, and I'll ask some of yours. But we want to go through my list here. One is just, they both have a leadership gift. They both exercise it in their work. I was just curious, we kind of want to know, how does that work at home?
Well, the joke actually is that I use it all up at work, and when I come home, I'm kind of like worthless, but that is not true. I contribute quite a bit around the home as well. But I think after 28 years, we've been married almost 28 years, we've sort of learned, to balance. We're pretty yin and yang, actually, so where my strengths lie in leadership are quite opposite to where his are, and so I think we really actually complement each other quite a bit, particularly around parenting and leading the household in that regard. I'm a little high-strung. He's more laid back. There's balance in what we do, but I would say pretty complementary.
Yeah, and I think that's a good word for it. I think sometimes it's easy to focus on the opposites, the things that are different, as though being the same is the goal, especially in a marriage. Like, we need to like all the same stuff. And what I find is that we are pretty complementary. And so you tend to be less controlling than I am. That's a way of me saying I'm controlling without having to say I'm controlling. I want things the way I want them. And so the fact that you use up a lot of your sort of leadership drive at work and don't come home and then want to boss everything at home makes it easier for me to kind of have things the way I want. So for years, the joke in our house is I painted myself into a corner because she did the laundry the first few years of our marriage, and I decided I wanted the laundry done a very particular way, and I earned the opportunity to do the laundry as a result of that. And so for 6 years, I've done the laundry because I want the laundry done the way I want the laundry done. And that's the other side of being controlling, is sometimes you've got to do it if you want it done exactly that way.
Wow. Okay. They're
See
being
us
open.
for marriage advice as well.
That's right. That's good. All right. Well, Nicole, I had a question for you. So how do you see nonprofit leadership, particularly being in such a large nonprofit? I honestly think it's probably one of the largest employers in our community, different from, say, business leadership, particularly he's in a small business leadership. How does that look different to you? I'm curious.
I was thinking about this question. I feel like every answer sounds kind of bad to the business leader. But I think leadership in general is complicated and difficult, whether it's a small crew or a large crew, whether it's profit or not-for-profit. But at the end of the day, I do truly at my core believe, especially from my organization who provides community-owned and really the only hospital in this community, people wouldn't live in a community if there wasn't a hospital. And I feel the weight of making sure that hospital is sustainable, that we have the people we need there, the experts that we need there. And so I do think that in some cases, the nonprofit world holds a little bit more weight to what I do every day. I still got to maintain a budget. I still got to manage people in complicated situations. But I also always think of the bigger picture of, is this hospital going to be here for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren? Is the history of my family going to be able to continue to live in this community? Because healthcare is one of those constants that people look for when they want to move into a community. And so I think every nonprofit typically has a broader mission that sort of draws people to it, that just gives it a bigger motivation, if you will. It doesn't make leadership any less difficult or any easier, but I think there can be a little more passion behind that.
Okay. And then, Jeff, I would be curious about advice you would give, because clearly you've walked the entrepreneurial path to a small business, a person starting a small business, running a small business. What advice would you give to that person? Yeah,
so I mean, if the person was saying, hey, I really want to start a small business, what I would say is, don't do that. I would be joking.
Kinda.
But yeah, there are certainly days. So here's the deal: you can have a boss, And when you have a boss, very often you want to not have a boss. And so then you say, I want to be my own boss. And you realize you have the worst boss in the world. That it is a blessing and a curse to be able to do your own thing and to not have to, quote unquote, answer to somebody else. The real answer would be something more like to have conversations with as many small business owners as you can to understand the reality of what that looks like. Because we think sometimes, I'm really good at this thing, or I love doing this thing. I want to start a business where I can go do that. And then you realize that that's like 40% of your time, and the other 60% is running a business, building a business, marketing a business. And so you've got to be somebody who is not only interested and passionate about a thing, but also willing at some point to say, I'm going to need help around me to make this business work. And sometimes that means letting go of the thing that you are good at so that you can run an enterprise, as opposed to just saying, I get to go do the thing that I love every day. That, for some people, that's a very natural transition. For other people, that is very jarring. So I have been out of the operational details at Dateline for about a year and a half now. And it's been a weird transition to not sort of have those daily strokes of, I did this thing and I accomplished this thing and I made this thing and the customer liked it and that was great. To have other people that do those things for you at some point in your business cycle, it's a little different. So I would just say, talk to as many people as you can, because there's a lot more to it than what you see on TV or what you think you see in the community.
Okay. So we've already learned that you do laundry different. So I am curious how you do leadership, how your leadership styles are different.
So my leadership style, it's not a technical term. You wouldn't find it probably in a book, but I'm an integrator. So I like to get consensus. I like a people-led team. I realize that as the leader, sometimes I do have to make the final decision, but as my dad, who is in the audience, will tell you, I struggle to make decisions. I blame him for that, because he didn't let me make enough decisions growing up. And so I like the input of others. I also am a stabilizer. So I don't live in chaos for very long before I have put that chaos in a box. So I can tell you, leading through a pandemic in a healthcare setting with no playbook, that is like, woo, that is not my area of expertise at all. And every day it was like, how do I put this chaos in a box so I can manage it? How do I put the work that we need to do in a box so I can manage it? And that's as much for me as it is for my team to feel good about coming to work every day and knowing what we were going to get done in this world where we didn't really know what we needed to do or how we needed to do it or how it was going to change the next day or the next week. And so I think that has been my leadership go-to. I think that's the strength that I add to the organization that I work for, is I'm the stabilizer in the group. I'm the one who kind of finds the pathway in the chaos.
Okay.
And then he is the chaos.
So I think we end up in the same place. So I've got my enemy of the status quo shirt on here, right? She is the defender of the status quo. Give me the status quo. Tell me more about it. I want to honor that. I want to know all the rules. She said many times, she's like, show me the box, and I will do a great job inside that box. I want to understand the parameters. I want to understand what is expected so I know how to do a good job. And I'm like, I too want to know where the box is so I know where I can sort of sneak outside it, and which of these walls are like really permanent and which could be manipulated. But what I think where we align is I don't like chaos for the sake of chaos. I like progress. And I don't mind breaking something if there's the idea of something better on the other side of it. To be able to say, you know what? The way we've done this for a long time has served us well, but I think there's a way it could be done better, differently, whatever. And that creates chaos for a moment, but I love to build systems. I was out in my recording studio yesterday rewiring a bunch of stuff because I had this idea of how it could be done better. And once you start ripping everything apart, there's this big mess. But then it's just a logic problem about how to get all the things reconnected, how to make all the systems talk to each other and do those things. And so in the end, we do want like this stability. We want to create something that makes sense and that works the same way over and over again. I am just more inclined to break it every once in a while and say, there's something better we could do, whereas she would be like, it's good the way it is. I like it the old way. I like the old ways are the best ways.
All right. So what is a book or podcast or resource that has really affected your leadership?
Sure. I've got two that sort of come to mind that I think of that sort of encapsulate it. One is a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. I realized at some point that to be a good leader, I really needed to have my house in order. It wasn't just about whether or not I could inspire people or whether or not people would buy into this vision, but it was about, could I execute? Could I not be the most disorganized and distracted person in the building, right? They had to trust that I was going to be able to keep my promises and do the things that I said I was going to do. And that book was very transformative because I think for a lot of years, being the breaker, the person who wants to build the new system, I think that I looked at productivity as like, there's got to be another better way to do it. And so I was constantly, adopting a new system, looking at it a new way. And it was probably early 2000s when I intersected with that book. And I was like, this is the thing that works for me. And I haven't needed to break my system, and you tweak stuff, but I haven't tried to retool the whole thing since then, which for someone like me is a statement. So that was really about the sort of structural, operational, how I work. And then Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. I think that is, I'm sure I'm adding a bunch of other stuff in there, but just the idea that leadership is a responsibility. It's not just about authority. It's not just about who you get to boss around and who has to listen to you. But it really is a massive responsibility to say other people are looking to me for direction. They're looking to me to know where to go, what to do, how we're going to do this. And that to me was a pretty important book, just from like the idea of being a servant and the idea of leadership being a service as opposed to a badge of honor.
The number one challenge I feel like leaders have in my 25 years of experience is giving feedback. They avoid it, and they avoid it because it's difficult and it's awkward and it's complicated. And as an HR professional, I know that giving meaningful feedback is what helps people grow. It's crucial to success and development, and yet it's the thing that every leader just cannot always seem to do. And so as an HR professional also, I spent many years kind of preaching like this is, you need to give them feedback, you need to tell them. And in 2016, I read this book called Radical Candor, and now I'm like a feedback evangelist, if you will. This gal, and if you go out on YouTube, her name is Kim Scott, and she has several YouTubes, but there's a 10-minute YouTube on Radical Candor, and it will change how you view giving feedback, because she shares a story about a coworker or an employee she had who she avoided giving feedback to because she didn't want to hurt his feelings. And as the team became more and more frustrated with Bob, she realized at a certain point she had to fire Bob because he was impacting the whole team. And when she sat him down and talked to him about how the team was feeling and about his work, he just looked at her and said, "How come nobody ever told me?" And that just struck a huge chord in me that we have to give people the benefit. Like, sometimes they don't know they're not doing what you want them to do, or sometimes they don't know how to do it the right way. And so avoiding giving people feedback because you want to hurt their feelings is way worse than ultimately terminating them at some point. And so I think if there's one takeaway for any leader, if you're going into leadership, it's like, get comfortable with giving feedback, because this book will kind of walk you through. If it can come from a caring place. That doesn't make it maybe less awkward. That doesn't mean the person's going to jump up and down and give you a hug, but it does come from a better place that helps you and helps them move forward. I've had more rewarding feedback conversations since reading this book than unrewarding feedback conversations. And I've had some of those too. Those are a reality. But I think this book really changed my focus on giving feedback, and it really is the backbone of leadership, is being able to give feedback to your teams. All
right. What is a leadership mistake you've made, and what did you learn from it?
I should probably go first because I'm sure you haven't made any of those. No, I could just say mine first, because then if hers is the same, then she's copying me. Really holding on to too many things. I think delegation has been a theme we've heard a few times here this morning. And at some point I realized that in an attempt to either protect other people, like I'll just do it so that you don't have to bear that burden, or maybe just a lack of trust. Like you know how well you train somebody by the things that you will let go of, right? With that moment when you're like, oh, I'll just do it, that should be ringing alarm bells in your ears that say, you haven't set them up for success. Like if they can't handle these things, and you're having to absorb them, it's because you need to reinforce that. So really understanding that to hold on to those things was robbing them of the opportunity to grow, to learn new things, to really extend themselves. I looked at it as, I'm going to dump more stuff on you, as opposed to, I'm going to give you the opportunity to learn new skills that are going to make you even more valuable here or someplace else. So holding on to things for too long certainly is a mistake that I have repeated.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that, probably from a different vantage point, though. There is a lack of giving up and allowing people to do. It's probably more of a control thing, and you want it done a certain way. But I think the mistake that I made was also just carrying it all. And so then you feel like the weight of the success is all on you, and that's a huge mistake. You're going to burn out. You're going to tank. You're not going to be successful. You're going to lose the joy for the job that you do. And so learning to embrace your team, spread the wealth, spread the stress. Ultimately, as a leader, you are totally responsible, but you can pull in support from your team members. And there was a season where I carried it all on my shoulders, and I did lose joy in my job. And I stepped away for 6 months and then came back and was renewed because I kind of had learned that lesson. And I definitely spread the stress differently amongst my team. And I don't see me as the savior or the only one that can solve the problem anymore.
Okay. I know both of you are Christians. I'm curious, how does your faith impact your leadership?
So I feel like my faith allows me to lead from a place of integrity and honesty, which sounds very basic, but I work with people that don't have integrity or honesty. I mean, I think that's a reality of the world that we live in, that not every business person, every vendor, every employee is honest. And I do think my foundation of faith has allowed me to lead from that effort. I also I feel like I have a partner in Christ in my leadership. I probably spend more time praying about my job than almost anything else, because it is a big stress in my life. It's a big job. And so time praying for my employees, for the issues that we deal with as an organization in this community. And so knowing that I have a partner in that I think has helped me be a stronger leader.
Yeah, very similar. When I was considering this question, I was like, I don't know how to answer this very well, because I feel like a lot of my dad was a pastor. I've grown up in a church environment, and I've grown up around these sort of like the idea that Christians operate in a certain way. And probably growing up around that, I'm naive enough to think that just must be what all Christians do, right? And so in my mind, there are these things that are just sort of baked into how I operate that I don't always think of, these are sort of specifically Christian values. And yet, I pray for my team every morning. I've got this morning startup routine, and my org chart is on there. And I'm going to guess not everybody prays for their team. I'm going to guess there are a lot of people out there who don't pray for their teams, right? That's kind of a simple thing. But I also recognize that, like, I would never ask anyone on my team to do something that I believed might be harmful to them, either from a legal perspective or a physical perspective. And yet, I'm reading this book right now, and it's a fictional book, but it's like fictional in a way that you're like, yeah, no, I believe that stuff like this happens in the world, you know? And the person in this story is consistently using violence and using anger and using force to get people to do what they want. And sometimes I think that I, again, am probably quite naive, but I just don't operate in a world where that would ever be a possibility. And I realize that really what I believe that how Christ would operate in me and through me really informs how I show up as a leader, and in ways that I don't necessarily think of specifically as, oh, that's because of this. I think, that's a classic Christian thing. At some point, I'm going to make it about something I did, right? I'm like, oh, wait, it's Christ in me, right? And so this question really forced me to kind of reflect on how much credit I give myself when it really is Christ working through me.
So the last question I have, and then we'll go to my phone and see what questions you have. So what is the best leadership advice you've been given, and what is the worst?
The best leadership advice that I was given, I hate to say, was from this guy to my left here, is that everything is figure-outable. There is not a problem.
Which I lifted from somebody else.
There's not a problem that's going to come across my desk that we can't find a solution for. And so just, get your team, get your resources, you can figure it out.
I will also add, this woman wrote down some notes this morning about something that was up on the screen, and I was like, I say that all the time. But she's got to hear it from somebody else. So there you go. The thing that comes up over and over and over again for me as a leader, and especially in a marriage, is the idea of same team. We have 4 nephews, 2 nieces, and a daughter, and we've watched a lot of very terrible soccer games from like 6-year-olds, And they just this huddle and cluster as they run around the field, and all the parents are yelling, same team, because they're all trying to kick the ball at the same time, and it is not working at all. And man, grown-up people are not that different. Like we're competing against people who we should be collaborating with, right? And the other night, I knocked a drink. I had a glass of water. I knocked a drink over, and I stood up immediately to go get some towels, and she just sat there in her chair. And what did I say? Thanks a lot for helping. And it was like I had to pause for a second and be like, I'm sorry. We're on the same team here. I don't know why I'm trying to make you the enemy in this situation. You didn't knock the water over. But it's like sometimes the people that are close to us, we immediately look to and be like, why aren't you doing whatever? And so this morning she needed a battery for her phone. She didn't have her spare battery, but I did. And she was like, oh, thank you for letting me borrow that. And I was like, same team. Sometimes I need to be very reminded, both in this relationship and in a workplace relationship, we're not competing against each other. Why in the world would I need to make this big elaborate point about how I was right and you were wrong if our goal is to win together, right? And the same thing in the workplace. It's not that we don't ever need correction in the workplace, but I think there are a lot of times when we are competing with one another instead of saying, same team. So I coach a lot of people. It sounds like you need to have a same team conversation. Sounds like you need to talk to this person and say, hey, we're on the same team, and I want to make sure that you understand that I'm trying to work with you, not against you. I'm trying to help us both win, not create a situation where you're put in a bad spot. Sometimes we just don't see that. We see the people around us as competitors. So.
Okay. So someone texted, and I think, I don't know, maybe they're interested in doing this. So Jeff, did you gain additional training, like certification as a coach consultant, or are you using your personal leadership experience to coach other business leaders? Like, did you have to go get formal?
Yeah. So, I mean, that certainly does exist. For me, it was much more of an organic process where, as a result of having some amount of recognizability in the business community, people started asking me to do that. So no, I don't have any specific training other than 20-something years in the trenches and struggling a lot longer probably than necessary on a lot of issues. So it's funny. The worst piece of advice I ever got was to really sort of try to diminish the fact that I didn't finish college. I went through about 6 weeks at 18 and said, this isn't for me, and started doing other stuff. And I really took that too much to heart, this advice, that maybe you shouldn't let people know that, because people are going to they're going to measure you differently if they know you didn't go to college and, all this kind of stuff. And that has since kind of become a calling card of like, that's just who I am. Like, school is for some people. It was not for me at that time of my life. And I'm a very different person than I was at 18, and I'm much more disciplined now. But no, I don't have any specific, certifications or anything like that. It is street smarts.
Okay. So somebody asked, and you can both answer or either one, what is your calling in life? Did you find your calling, or did it find you?
Gosh, I put a lot of my identity in my career, so it does feel like a calling, I guess. And when I started at University I went to UAF. I did go to college, 2 degrees.
See, she did it for both of us.
I knew I wanted to get a business degree, and I thought I wanted to go into tourism. And my freshman year in college, I took a Tourism 101 class. At the same time, I was taking a Personnel, at the time they called it 101. And as I was sitting in the Tourism 101 class, I realized I'm going to be working while everyone around me is on vacation. I don't want to do that. I want to work around people who want to work. And so I immediately changed direction and went into human resources. And I've had this tremendous 25-year career and have had so much opportunity from being part of a large organization that was managed outside by a health system out of Arizona to moving independent, which comes with a whole different level of opportunity and learning. And I do think it's a calling. And I have been coached in the past, like, end your day and ask yourself, what energized me today? And it really is the things that I get to do in my day that are really related to people that energize me. And so that helps me know I'm doing what I was supposed to do.
Okay. Someone texted, as a growing leader and business owner, how do you handle situations with clients in your business growth where you have overpromised and underdelivered when you didn't have the skills or understanding despite your best intentions? I feel discouraged and frustrated when this happens, but I know mistakes are part of business and leadership growth. So how do you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, with as much grace as you can muster and with honesty. The hard part, I think, sometimes is that in business, we all want to appear competent. We all want to make sure everyone knows that we're smart and we know what we're doing and you can count on me. And when we fail, which is going to happen, when it breaks, it could be, it's very personal. It's not this externalized thing where some massive entity has failed them. It's sort of like, I failed you, And so I think being able to express that apology very sincerely and personally. I always coach people, there is no we're sorry. There is only I'm sorry, right? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be your fault even to say I'm sorry. You can be sorry for the experience they're having, and I'm sorry that this didn't work for you. But to make that personal is important. But I'm just a big believer in what I call interrogating mistakes. I think I've traditionally spent a lot of time rehashing mistakes, rehearsing mistakes, and beating myself up for the things that I didn't do right. I mean, I'm sure 100% at some point tonight, as I'm falling to sleep, I will think of something I said here this morning and be like, oh, dang it. But to interrogate your mistakes is to look at it more like a scientist. I like the idea of putting on a white lab coat and saying, what can this teach me? What do I learn from this that will help inform the next time, so that in the context of this question, so that I know how to better estimate my capabilities, so I know how to make promises I can keep, as opposed to finding myself in a situation where I've made a promise that I'm like, ooh, I wasn't able to deliver on that, right? interrogating your mistakes is sort of separating the you part from it and saying, here's the thing that happened, here's these events that occurred. What can they teach me about how to operate differently tomorrow so that I don't have to experience that same thing again?
Okay. And then someone texted, do you have any advice or recommendations for providing feedback to one's leadership? So they're not, the top leader. How do you give feedback if it's your boss to your boss?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good HR question, right?
Everybody's got this question, 100%.
Delicately. Well, you have to have a relationship. Don't throw yourself in the fire. You have to prep for that conversation, and you have to ask, can I give you feedback? My caution to anyone would be, what is your relationship? Because feedback is best received when it is given in a relationship. If your relationship is already adversarial, it's probably not a great idea. But if you are building a relationship of respect, credibility, and caring, you should have the power to ask if you can give them feedback.
Okay.
There's a great book by my friend Stephen Shedletsky. That's a mouthful, I know, but it's called Speak Up Culture, and it is about the sort of organizational idea of we all need to be able to talk to our bosses. We need to be able to create an environment in which voices can be heard universally. So that, I would just recommend that as a great place to start.
And I would say in her book, she talks about that. We shouldn't be giving feedback if
No,
we're not.
my book.
No.
No, my friend Steven.
We shouldn't be giving feedback if we're not asking for feedback. So she really sets the stage for creating a culture where you can more freely give feedback to your staff, but in turn, you're also asking for feedback from them.
Okay. And someone texted, for Jeff, love your company and work you have done for us in the past. We did see an extremely strong employee leave for her own goals. How do you best prepare your team for that kind of change or loss?
Yeah, it's tricky in a small organization because we don't have the ability to have a lot of employee redundancy, right? Like we don't have a strong pipeline where it's like, oh, we've got people waiting in the wings to take over all these things. We're basically entry level across the board, right? So I think that is challenging, but to answer the question, it is creating strong documentation and really strong collaboration across the organization where there's as much cross-training as possible. I discovered at one point, again, goes back to my mistake, I knew all sorts of secrets that weren't supposed to be secrets. They just were things that would die with me if I, stepped into traffic tomorrow. No one would ever know them. And so we really embarked on a season of documentation, of capturing as much information as we could in systems where everyone had access to them, or at least everyone that needed access had access to them, because it became very, very clear that any information that lived with one person and one person only was dangerous to the company, right? We needed the ability to have that shared. And so for a small organization like ours, you have more people on your team than I have in my whole company, right? And so for a small organization like ours, we just don't have the ability to, we're very flat. We don't have the ability to have somebody move up six rungs and sort of progress. And so there aren't a lot of opportunities to really prime someone to say, you're the next person, and here's when it happens. It sort of happens when someone leaves. And so I tend to look at what we're trying to accomplish is that of like a minor league manager for baseball. Like if you're the Yankees, you get all the best players, and all the sort of sub-level teams, they're all built to move people up to you. And so we don't have that internally, but we are that at some level for these people. We're trying to prepare you, and maybe that's going to be used here long term, and maybe it's going to be used somewhere else. But my goal is to make sure that they have everything they need and are given the opportunities to learn, and sometimes that's going to cost me, and they're going to go and do something else.
Okay. And someone asked for Nicole, does she hope Jeff will wear grown-up shoes someday? I don't know. That's what came in. All right.
Wow.
They're not in my phone, so I can't tell you who it was. Anyway.
They're texting from a burner.
Yeah.
Got him. Got him.
Sing and out. Okay. So can we give them a hand? Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. All right, and so our next one is Tom Bartels, and he is the owner and operator of North Pole Coffee Roasting Company. And just kind of I don't think he knows this, but one time at Journey, I don't know, somebody wanted to use a different coffee, and my wife was like, absolutely not. This is the best coffee. So you can thank my wife that we do this coffee, his coffee every week. So welcome Tom up, and he'll share with you.
Well, thank you, Pastor Derek. I thought I'd just kind of let you know where I'm at. My wife and I had the pleasure and opportunity to take a trip to Europe, and so about 48 hours ago, it's midnight. So I'm still adjusting to where we're at, and so it's been kind of a punchy thing, and of course. I managed to come home with a little cold, but we'll make it through. So, but I want to thank Pastor Derek because he's invited me to be here for 3 years, and this is the first year it's actually worked out with my schedule, and so with this opportunity, Pastor Derek, I really appreciate this chance, and just to kind of share a little bit. You're going to hear a little bit about my story later, but. This holy ground that we are standing on has significant personal meaning to me. My parents, in or about 1988, built their home here in Fairbanks, right across the street. And they lived in that house for 20 years. And when it was time to let it go, it was very emotional. Very gratifying. But the Lord works in mysterious ways, and that house managed to carry them through to the end of their life. And they absolutely left this world owing nobody anything and not having a dime in their pocket. And I just think that is an amazing story. So, Pastor Derek, my father would be very proud of you and what you've accomplished here. So, thank you. I believe in confirmation, and though I didn't know she was going to be here, and she didn't know I was going to say this, I have a past employee in the audience. Right, Tara Klein? So if anything, if you want any confirmation on what I'm going to share today, I encourage you to ask Tara any questions. But I will say this. Somebody asked the question earlier from the audience, what do you do when you lose a strong employee? Tara was a key cornerstone for our business when she worked with us. And she moved on for the betterment of her family and life, and we were just totally joyed when that happens. It's hard, ain't gonna lie. But now, Tara has gone from employee to she's one of my bosses. What do I mean? Well, somebody asked the question earlier, too, about what is it like to be a small business owner? You know, having the freedom and all the luxuries that go along with a small business. But let's not forget, there's a lot of things you don't see, a lot of sleepless nights. You're the last one to be paid, and you go from maybe a singular boss to, in my case, I have hundreds of bosses because they're called customers. Tara's one of my bosses. So, I want to make sure, I'm going to pause for just a second, soak in that screen behind me, just let it permeate into your mind. Because I am not a public speaker, and so as Dave and Don presented with slides, this is all you get. So, but I'm going to refer to my notes and try to leave you with some impactful things that, for me, and have been instrumental in guiding my life in more ways than one. Pastor Derek asked me for a topic, and I struggled a little bit with it, but I came up with this: leadership, the heart of the matter. So that's where my cornerstone, that's where I'm coming from, and I'm gonna try to give you the best I can, so bear with me. I think that we all might agree that we are a product of our surroundings, and a large part of that mold comes from those that we are blessed to encounter that shape our hearts and minds, that lead us to become the best version of us that we can be, that through values shared and held onto, we are defined and our pathways are etched. I am a very blessed man. I got to marry my, I'll say, high school sweetheart, but we met graduation night, 1983, May of 1983, and have been married to my wife, Janet, for 37 years. We've had two amazing kids. I wanted to name them Ball and Chain. I got outvoted, Tana and Tyler, and they are just the joy of our life. Our daughter, Tana, and her husband, Tyler, have blessed us with two grandsons. I tell you, if you ever want to know, it's the best job ever. And every chance I get, I like to hold on to them, and I let them know you're going to do amazing things in this life, because they're going to do amazing things in this life. I have numerous friends, an amazing team of coworkers, and a God who loves and has provided me even when I thought it not possible. In Isaiah 41:13, "Fear not, for I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand and help you always." I can't tell you, that is probably etched on my heart. I have leaned on my God, and he has never let me down. Today, I do not come to present some sort of a business plan. If I were to, it would probably go something like this, a short version that I received many years ago from a friend, Jay Ramris, who some of you might know owns Pike's Landing. Make sure you have an accountant in your corner, a good business attorney, and a banker you can trust. That's all I got. Somebody asked the question about, going into business and what do I need to know? I agree. Ask lots of questions and get yourself a good accountant, a good attorney, and a solid relationship at a bank. Before I get started, though, there are a few insights on leading that I wanted to touch on. The first one, humility, the key to success. Early in our business, we were over our head. We had a debt to pay, was working lots of hours, and I can remember and share with my wife many a times pulling up to the post office and saying a little prayer, "God, just enough. I just need enough." And I was never let down. We were always praying for just enough. Connect the team, and the goal will follow. We have monthly team meetings at North Pole Coffee. It's a bit of a timeout for us to just kind of regroup, touch base. Our entire team meets, and we do it over food because people connect over food, and that's important. Standards, have them, lead by them, hold yourself first accountable to them. I call it the daily mirror test, and it goes from, how you carry yourself to what you say, and just the way you dress. We want to make sure that we're always promoting the best image that we can, and so I make sure that I'm not only living by the standards that I preach, but also making sure that everybody understands the whys. Be firm but compassionate. Sometimes you must lose to win. Be understanding. There's things that happen in each and everyone's life that sometimes they get crossed up with our goals. But remember, it's a long game. It's not a short game. And I often tell my managers, are you better with them or without them? And the answer is always, we're better with them. So figure it out. I think it was Dave that said he had only terminated 3 people in his tenure. And I was pondering back there. I think I'm maybe only 2 in my tenure. But here's where I'm going with that, is that you must go, but not forever. At North Pole Coffee, we have had to let a couple people go. For reasons it's not important, but I always make sure before we part ways to let them know that it's not forever, because I feel like, we have a forgiving God. We need to show that forgiveness sometimes, and sometimes people's struggle in their life isn't permanent. It's temporary. And I know one of the 2 that comes to mind is it was a star employee. It was the hardest day of my career. But we survived it, so it's not forever. Your number one asset is your people. It can be the biggest number on your profit and loss statement is your payroll, can be, depending on what business you're in. So it's your number one asset. It probably is the one item that we least prioritize. So give that some thought. And lastly, life balance. For me, faith, family, and friends. And there has to be a balance. Too much one side or the other, and things can get crazy real quickly. So, forgive me for a second. I meant to thank the firefighters that are here too today. So thank you for your service as well. I too am a preacher's kid. I think Jeff mentioned that, but my father was a Baptist minister who loved the Lord and never missed an opportunity to share his Jesus with anyone he encountered. Some of you in the audience might know him or remember him. Very early in life, he shared with me this simple principle. Always work like you're being watched, because, son, you're always being watched. This has been a cornerstone for my work ethic, the seed planted within me that I feel has driven me to do my best, whether within my career choices, on the basketball court, the baseball field, the football field, and yes, even the friends I have chosen to spend my time with. As a preacher's kid, we tended to move about every 4 years to a new state for my father's work. This required managing being the new kid in school, making new friends, establishing yourself within the sports arenas, and figuring out the best opportunity for a job that was flexible enough to balance all of the above. This practice in my life was repeated again and again and again. And I wouldn't have changed. You asked me during the tornado, I would have said, this is crazy. I wouldn't have changed a thing. Looking over my shoulder, I think, is one of the best things about life I've learned. I'm going to just jump right into my Alaska time, though. The most impactful years of my life that I feel have developed me into who you see today. My family and I moved to Alaska in September of 1981, where I started my junior year at Lathrop High School. I was a small-town boy coming into a big city that was unimaginable. I like to refer these years as my moral compass years. I quickly got a job at Safeway. I began as a courtesy clerk, pushing grocery carts in at 40 below, and managed several departments there and worked my way up to what was called SMT, or Safeway Management Training. These years I refer to as my retail and customer service venture. I left Safeway for a liquor distributing job because it was Monday through Friday, and I thought it would offer me a better lifestyle. I started there as a merchandiser and worked up through this to become a salesman, and these are the years I refer to as my sales venture. I left that particular distributorship and went to work for the Odom Corporation because the liquor industry is not good for a marriage, and I needed to change where I was spending my time. I worked for a man who had a big impact on my life. His name was Porter Jordan, and a lot of his teachings still resonate today, and I can hear his voice. He is no longer with us. He's with the Lord, but his spirit lives on through me. So he hired me, I think, because he got tired of seeing me at 6 a.m. at his doorstep, and created a job. I was sweeping the warehouse and loading a truck at nights, and quickly I became one of his managers, and at the age of 28, was promoted to a branch manager here in Fairbanks. And these are the years I refer to as my management venture. After 16 years at the Odom Corporation, had the opportunity to buy North Pole Coffee from a friend of Janet and mine by the name of Greg and Holly Abshire. I was 42 at the time, 2 kids, mortgage, what could go wrong? Our backup plan was my in-laws' basement. That seems kind of sexy. So here we are. But with Janet's support, we took the challenge, and we purchased North Pole Coffee in September of 2006. There was 3 employees at the time, and I was one of them. Today I'm happy to report that we are a company of 38 strong and getting stronger. Thank you. Those years were working with a picture of my family in front of me because they were the motivation that kept me going when I didn't think it was possible. These are the years that I refer to as my business owner venture. So to summarize, you must believe in yourself and apply yourself to the fullest ability that you possess every day. Remember, always work like you're being watched, because you're always being watched. So now that you know how I got here, I thought that I would share some of the more impactful principles that I lead by from advice that I've been given along my journey. Short statements that have influenced my leadership style and how I attempt to share this mentorship and pay it forward. So these are the words I hope you can hold on to. Remember, I don't have any slides. So the top 11 principles from the heart of how we lead and coach at North Pole Coffee. Let's start with a familiar one that many of you may have heard before, but it is so true on the road to creating raving fans. Undercommit and overdeliver. I think I just heard that in one of the questions presented to the Welches. How do you separate yourself from the noise of your competitor? It is a statement through action. Another way of putting it is this: the easiest road to travel is the extra mile because there are fewer people on it. Competition will not set our bar. We will through our own actions and accountability. Earlier, I mentioned that our team gets together to share a meal once a month. In 2009, we moved to our existing warehouse. Part of the design was at the request of my father that we incorporate a kitchen into the warehouse so that he could come by and cook meals for our team. Usually, most Fridays, he would come and prepare breakfast for us to enjoy. It was during these shared moments that I realized there was a deeper bond being created amongst our staff. Fast forward to today, we still share this same experience of eating once a month together during our team meeting, but also I take advantage of this time to share a short read from the book, Customer Love, Great Stories About Great Service by Mac Anderson. Somebody asked about what's the best book I've ever read. These are 24 short stories that if you want to get educated quickly on what it takes to provide good customer service, I highly encourage you to make the $10 investment. Absolutely. Learn from example and then lead by example. A good manager is a fish in the fishbowl. Some of the lessons along the way are pointed and powerful. Find the good training role models and hold on to their teachings, but also, and just as important, learn from the negative role models and hold on to the morals of not repeating their actions when you are put into a leadership opportunity. There are lessons in all walks of life that we engage ourselves in, and sometimes the lessons we learn aren't always the ones we expected. Learn from example, and then lead by example. You only get one chance at a first impression. So often we get in too much of a hurry and blow through stop signs along the way. This is probably one of the most important lessons I learned from one of my mentors. For example, being in the service business that requires equipment that can fail, it is the most important practice that we always bench test the appliance before going to a new customer's place of business. Nothing loses faith in us more than dropping the ball on that first impression when things don't work as they were supposed to. It's like going to the prom, making certain everything is perfect and prepared for, but running out of gas on the way to the dance. Not so fun. You only get one chance at a first impression. Never forget how you got there. As you are presented with the opportunity to grow within one's job role of progress, remember what it took to succeed or advance. Jump in and assist whenever possible to create the synergy of team. Also, within a small business, you don't have a deep bench, so having to fall back on previous responsibilities is just another definition for survival. Never forget how you got there. Hire for the betterment, not for control. When we have the chance to bring on a new employee, we strive to get our boat to float a bit higher in the ocean. Don't be intimidated by strong applicants. We should always be looking for our replacement for the good of the business. Our business is bigger than any one of us, and it is the responsibility of my managers to protect our future through looking for the training for the training of their own replacements, our tomorrow's leaders. This allows the managers to have a better job experience and to be able to grow and be better positioned for their own advancement. Hire for betterment, not for control. Employees, you get the strong back and the weak back. Make certain everyone is in the right seat on the bus. Know your staff and their capabilities and limits. I'm sure maybe some of you have heard of what's called the Peter Principle. I'm going to share a recent story. We had an employee that I promoted to a position. because he was doing an exceptional job at his current role. In an effort not to let me down, he accepted the new job, and we both got frustrated. And it wasn't a good situation. And then came the tough conversation where I had to reverse the decision several months later to salvage the employee. Because he had value and worth to me, I had him in the wrong seat on the bus. Just yesterday, he came to me and thanked me for making that change. Because he was not having a good time. His life was frustrated. He knew I was frustrated. The Peter principle, be careful. Get to know your coworkers on a personal level first. Where they come from, their family, their interests, hobbies, what leadership roles outside of work they may hold. It might surprise you what they are capable of. I love to tell the story. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to present in front of the Costco team. And one of the stories that came out of that was the vice president of the corporation was sharing one day he, as a store manager, he came around the corner and the night floor scrubber was torn into multiple pieces. This is, he said, about a $60,000 piece of equipment. And he was beside himself. And he found the employee who spoke very broken English, had only been with him for a matter of a couple months, who had torn it apart. And of course, he was furious. But through their dance of communication, comes to find out that this man had moved to America. He was the gentleman who built the units where he came from. And it wasn't working right, and he fixed it. It's an amazing story. So always try to know your people. Employees, you get the strong back and the weak back. Make certain everyone is in the right seat on the bus. Give credit where credit is due. I once worked for a manager that played dodgeball with recognition. What do I mean? When it was a bad, he wasn't anywhere to be found. When there was something to celebrate or to be recognized for, he always put himself in the front. Make it a point to put your people first. Remember, they are the number one asset. As a leader, always speak the truth. Know when to buffer messages that should and can be limited to those who need to know, but always try to build your employees' morale, even at one's own expense. Give credit where credit is due. My wife loves this one. Stay in your lane. Don't micromanage your team. Decisions should be pushed down so that time is allowed for you to do your job. In our early days, I had no one to share ideas or decisions with, so I had to make them all. In about 2013 or 2014, we saw some substantial growth up to this time and had even moved into our newly purchased warehouse. It was about this time that we hired an outside consultant to come in and assess our business to see what we could do better. At this time, my days had not gotten any shorter or lighter, and I knew that I could not sustain the pace I had been at. The outcome was I was the problem. Talk about cold water, but all decision-making, all questions were coming through me, and there's just not enough time to answer all those things. So we quickly created a new management circle, empowered our managers with decision-making, and, this is important, expectations and accountability. Because everybody needs to know what's expected of them, and then it's your job to hold them accountable. So stay in your lane. The only wrong decision, what's the answer, Tara? No decision. The only wrong decision is no decision. My managers know that they are empowered to make decisions and that I will stand behind them when they make them. If after the fact I feel that their decision may have not been what I would have done, I will nonetheless support them, and then we will coach for the next time. To be able to grow, you need to make mistakes along the way. It is important to provide a safe environment for learning, and I choose to coach from behind. The only wrong decision is no decision. Never got time to do it right the first time, always got time to do it over. When it comes to doing things right, there are no shortcuts at North Pole Coffee. For example, we have a process to check our customers' orders twice with 2 separate employees, one being the driver, one being warehouse, before our vans are loaded and headed out to market. Once we get to the customer's business, the order is checked a 3rd time by the delivery driver. Can't tell you how painful a lesson it is when the mistake is caught at our furthest customer from our warehouse on a sunny summer Friday afternoon. The foul is fixed that day, no exception. Our customer trust is built around getting it right. Never got time to do it right the first time, always got time to do it over. Lastly, but possibly most importantly, cooler minds prevail. When there are tough times that require tough decisions, and there will be tough times, we wait 24 hours before conversations or final decisions are made. I have found that with most things in life, a good night's rest can minimize a whole lot of emotions and make for better decisions. Cooler minds prevail. These dozen principles, I feel, have helped me to become a better leader for my team and my family. As you can see, they are all people related to coaching aspects of life, because it is my humble opinion that to succeed in life, we need to connect and inspire each other. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor giving preference to one another. Romans 12:10. Want to be a good leader? Invest yourself to your number one asset. Thank you.
If you have a question, you can text it. I know I have at least one. Let me unlock my phone here. Someone wrote, how did it feel to take over where Starbucks was in the airport? Thank you for doing that. So how did that feel?
Well, I'm going to be honest. It was a team decision. I didn't make that decision. I put the onus of the decision on my managers because, quite frankly, they're the ones that are going to experience the life change. Sure, we'll support it, we'll fund it, we'll do what we have to do, we'll work the late hours and make it happen. But I made it clear that the life change wasn't going to be my life change. So you better just be careful with your decisions. So it's that whole be careful what you wish for. Mm-hmm. But we have certainly appreciated and enjoyed the opportunity. And we thank Fairbanks and all the visiting community that comes and goes. And we're still learning, and we're trying to improve. And I keep saying, we need to get ice cream. We need to get ice cream. So, yeah, thank you.
All right. Another couple questions came in. Is it true that your favorite book in the Bible is Hebrews? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Right. A dad joke. See, somebody did the dad joke.
That is my favorite book.
That is your favorite book. Okay. So this person, you clearly have a strong faith. How do you integrate that into your leading, and how do you balance it as a business owner?
Can you repeat that?
So you clearly have a strong faith. How do you integrate that into your leading, and how do you balance it as a business owner?
I feel very confident that my team knows where I stand when it comes to my faith. We pray before all the meals that we have at our shop. I think it's important. You know, I will tell you that without my faith, I wouldn't be the person I am. I think our success and our grounding is central to that faith. And so if you have that much conviction and it creates that much of your fiber, it's natural. It's just who I am. And do I offend some people with that? I don't know. I don't know, but I'm okay because hopefully we have the opportunity to spend at least enough time for them to get to know me too.
Okay. That was all the questions, so thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So, couple things so I don't forget. Somebody lost a bracelet this morning, so I have that. It doesn't look good on me, so if you want your bracelet back, let me know. And then also, I just want to mention this. If you're interested. So Journey did publish a little book, and it's called Stories from Our Journey, and there's a stack of them out there, and it's free if you want it. And it's probably people you know. It's people who go to this church, and it's just kind of their God stories where they, an answer to prayer or God provided or that kind of thing. So if that interests you, love to give you that. When it's all done, you're welcome to grab one of those, but no pressure to take one of those at all. So we're down to the last speaker. It's going to be Ann Weaver. How about I give you a 5-minute break if you need to go get coffee or if you want to go to the bathroom or whatever, and then Ann will wrap us up. And just clarify, because I'm not sure, I don't remember if I said this. The early posters had Mark Hamilton, and he had agreed to come, and we love him, and I've had him multiple years. He had a health issue pop up right before, and he was not able to come, but he already is like, hey, I'm going to be great for next year, so we're already talking about next year, but that's what happened. He's fine. He's doing fine. It was just one of those unfortunate things, so he very graciously multiple years has flown himself in on his own dime, given a free speech, and and really shared some of his wisdom with us. So just so you're aware of that. So I apologize if that was the picture on there, and you're like, he was supposed to come and he did not make it. So he intended to and just wasn't able. So you got 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up with Ann Weaver. So.
Cassie said she picked it up.
Okay.
It was in my pocket for a long time. I'm like, oh no, I lost mine.
That's funny. Okay, yeah. Hey, could you go grab more of these out of the front office and just make sure there's plenty? I just wouldn't want somebody to not get one if they wanted them. They're just on the high table out there. All right, if we could gather again for our final presenter. Hey, Todd, could you yell out in the lobby just so they know? And so our final presenter is Ann Weaver, as I mentioned earlier. She is the CEO of the Fairbanks Food Bank, which is just a remarkable nonprofit in this town. If you want to give to them or volunteer or anything, just highly encourage you to do that. And yes, I'm completely biased. I'm on the board. I am a fan of the work they do there. It's incredible. And so anyway, so let's welcome Ann and turn it over to her. All right.
All right. It is always so fun. This is, I believe, the 8th year, of Elevate Leadership. It is just such an honor to be able to be here, to have the food bank be a part. And thank you to everybody who comes. And it's so fun because Pastor Derek does not give instructions or a sheet to follow. He says, what do you want to talk about? And I enjoy so much listening to how everybody's saying the same things. And every year it's kind of a different vein and a different focus, but it's always the same kind of conversations. So I'm gonna hit on that a little bit as we go through. But go ahead and throw that out there, it's cool. Did you know that Michelangelo's David, which is considered one of the most perfect pieces of art ever created, was sculpted from a rejected block of stone? The famous statue was started by Agostino de Duccio in 1464, and then carried on by Antonio Rossellino in 1475, who both ended up rejecting the project because the enormous block of marble had too many imperfections in it. They believed that the statue was not going to be stable. In 1501, 26-year-old Michelangelo was asked to complete the statue that had been laying neglected for 25 years. In January of 1504, Michelangelo unveiled this work of art to the vestry who had hired him, and they all agreed it was far too perfect to be hidden away high in the cathedral, which was its original intended home. So instead, they placed it in the heart of Florence. And due to its imposing perfection, the biblical figure of David became the symbol of liberty and freedom. What a beautiful image of leadership. One of the most masterful works of art ever created came from a rejected stone. One of the reasons that I like this so much is when I hire, you're going to hear me talk a lot about hiring here in a little bit. When I hire, we have a culture at the food bank that's a little different than your typical. I loved Jeff's statement earlier that kind of every level is kind of an entry-level position and there's no room to grow. We're a small nonprofit. But I intentionally hire from the rescue mission, from the halfway house, from, it's regular for our staff to need to go to their POs. They usually have anklets on. I know more about the justice system than most. So when I'm talking about beauty from a rejected stone, that has a little bit of an extra meaning to me. It took one talented artist, making it broken as it was, to mold it until they made it beautiful. Leadership is not about doing what those before you have done. But be careful of the other extreme. It's not about always breaking new molds either. It's not about being accepted. It's not about agreeing with those around you, or again, be careful, feeling the need to disagree with everybody because you're trying to, for your own. It's often about taking whatever you have, my weakness. Want me to stand still and do this? Voila. That better? All right. Leadership is often more about taking whatever it is you have, in whatever condition it's in, and both finding and then bringing out the beauty that's inside of it. Personally, I want to be a leader like Michelangelo, who found the beauty in the rejected stone. And here's another fun piece to that. That stone that wasn't stable has stood for over 500 years. Let's look at the same statue from a different angle. Have you ever heard, I've had so much fun this morning listening to folks, because every single person who's gone before me has talked about something that they've heard, something that they believed about leadership that over the course of time didn't stand firm for them. They had to figure out that perhaps it wasn't completely as true as they thought it was. So one of the things that I thought a lot about this last couple months is, especially growing up, I would hear, in order to be a great leader, you have to do exactly this. And whatever their exactly this is so black and white. And if you don't do exactly this, you are not a good leader. And I heard that over and over again from dozens and dozens of different sources on the radio and reading books. And if you don't lead this way, you're wrong. One of the ones that really bugged me, and it didn't bug me in a negative way, it bugged me in a I must be wrong way. The concept that all great leaders must be always on the floor, side by side, leading. And that one ate at me and ate at me and ate at me for years and years and years. Now, don't get me wrong. Absolutely, there are times to be on the floor, 100%. You heard, who was it? It was Patty and Dave this morning that were talking about when there's a need, you fill it. When it's snowing and people can't get in, you grab that shovel, you walk out there, you shovel. Absolutely. I know how to change my trash. I know how to do those things. I will do them. I'm happy to do them. I make a great helper. But if I spend all my time on the floor leading, doing the job that I've hired somebody else to do, who's doing mine? So for years, I thought about that, thinking, I'm not that kind of leader. I don't stand on the floor with my crew and work with them, so I must be wrong. I was hired, however, to hire and fire, to have a 40,000-foot view, to take care of the organization. That's why I was hired. So then I started thinking, well, am I doing a service or a disservice to those that I lead and those who are relying on me if I'm always at the checkout stands? You know, Tom and I went to some of the same schools, so to speak. My job is actually to make sure the right people are on the bus in the right seat. So I've come to understand that I have a specific leadership style, but there are leadership moments that are situational. Absolutely. When the snow needs to be shoveled, I'm going to be there. I'm going to help out. Absolutely. But that's a situational leadership more than an absolute leadership. There are some must-dos that have to happen, but sometimes they only have to happen for a little while. I guarantee things looked a little different in COVID. A situational leadership. So what I've discovered is that my big picture of leadership for me personally looks a little bit more like this. Hire well, and remember, what I'm talking about when I say hire well, there are a couple of positions that have to have certain training. For me, it's more about hiring somebody who fits in the culture. And then number 2 is vital, train well. Hire well, train well with regular encouragement and guidance. You've been hearing that all morning. It's brilliant. With regular encouragement and guidance. With correction when needed. You must correct. It's frustrating to everybody if you don't. It's another theme I've heard over and over again, but it was typed here 2 months ago. Isn't that fun, right? It is so incredibly important. You must correct. And then get out of their way. Let them do their jobs. If they're not a good fit, acknowledge it to them in the view of the organization, as appropriate, have whatever discussions you need to have. Allow them the freedom to move on to something that's going to be a better fit for them, and give yourself the freedom to find a better fit for your organization. Letting somebody go is not actually a closed door. It's often an open one. I'm a possibilist. This isn't a good fit. Let's talk about it. Let me give you guidance. If you're able and willing to take the guidance, then maybe we can change the seat of the bus you're on. Maybe we can make it work. If it's not going to work, let me give you the freedom to leave. Let me give me the freedom to replace you. And if it is a good fit, they get to thrive. They get to feel the joy of mastery. When I get out of their way, they get to feel the joy of mastery and accomplishment. They get to have ownership within the organization. What a win. What a win. To have a confident and competent workforce with ideas that I've never had, so that my organization gets to have fresh views and regular new ideas, not just my own. To have a workforce that believes in the mission and makes decisions that are best for the organization because they've been hired well and trained well, and they have a heart for what they're doing. To have a workforce that comes to you when they have questions because they trust, you saw that word on the board earlier, because they trust that you're worth having a conversation with, and then they're going to leave feeling better than when they arrived. What a win. And having this competent, capable workforce means that I get to do a better job at my job. It means I have the freedom to learn and develop and be the best that I can be, which helps my organization, absolutely helps the people that I work with, and the organization gets to thrive. Absolutely thrive. One of the examples that just happened, for those of you who aren't familiar with the food bank, we collect local surplus food and we give it out to people in need. And there are times of the year we're there all year long. Sometimes are really challenging because we don't have, it's dark and cold, more people are needing food and less people are thinking about giving. That's challenging. One of the other challenges is the holiday season because everybody wants to be involved, which is fantastic, but it's a different kind of busy, right? So here we are in Thanksgiving of this last year, busy. We're Thanksgiving busy at a food bank. And I ended up teaching, I've got a warehouse manager that I hired 6 years ago, and we'll talk about that in a second. So he's tried and true, he's been on the floor, he knows what he's doing, but he's very soft-spoken, he's very kind. And the mantra that I actually taught him to say this Thanksgiving was, "Ann, stuff a sock in it." Stuff a sock in it. And it took him, after 3 weeks of me nagging him that this was his new mantra, he finally jokingly said it at a staff meeting and then looked like he's very sweet. And so then he looked at me like, was that a mistake? And I started laughing because that's what I wanted him to say. "And stuff a sock in it." Because here he is. I got lots of ideas. And I've been a part of the food bank since 1990 when my mother was hired on originally as executive director. So I've been around, I've been on the floor, I got some ideas, I have an understanding of how things work. But my job is not on the floor, typically, unless I'm needed for something. My job is to be the oversight, make sure we're going the direction the board intends. So every single time that I would, very helpfully, go downstairs onto the floor and somebody had a question and they'd ask me, I'd answer, because that was really helpful. And then my sweet warehouse manager of 6 years, tried and true, been on the floor, knows what he's doing, has a smooth plan of how to do it, would go, okay, we'll do it that way now. And now he's got more work to do. He has to undo whatever damage I've just caused. And it wasn't that my idea was wrong or bad. It's that he'd been prepping for these weeks for months. And I had a great idea at that moment. So I said, Taylor, where's your mantra? And stuff a sock in it. Stuff a sock in it. Stop. Because all of my great ideas were not helpful to the guy who was tried and true, to the guy who knew what was happening, who'd planned for it with boots on the ground, not just been around for a while. You know, I had, holding things here. You know, to go through my model then, I had hired well 6 years ago when I hired him, which is a fun part of the story because he was in a rebuilding stage of his life 6 years ago. And what that meant is he didn't think he was a good hire 6 years ago, but he had a heart for what we were doing. He had a desire to constantly grow and develop, and he was trainable. So I hired well 6 years ago. And then he's been well trained by me and by those who have come before him on the floor. So he knows what he's doing. This is his 6th rodeo, not his 1st. And his way, at this point on that warehouse floor, is smoother and wiser than mine. Now, there are going to be some things that I see that I'll say, hey, Taylor, let's look at the direction here. Let's talk about this. Let's do that. But as far as implementation, my job's to get out of his way. I give him his guidance. We make sure we're on the same path. We make sure we have the vision. And then I got to get out of his way because he's tried and true. So what I've learned after decades and decades of really questioning the statement that you have to be an on-the-floor, side-by-side leader all the time to be a good leader is that's not my style. I'm a good helper. They need me to answer a phone call. I very much know how to put them on hold and say, let me get to somebody who can answer that better. Really good at that. All right. I know how to shovel. I know how to change toilet paper. I'm a good helper. I can carry a box and lift it and carry it. But the second that I start getting out of my lane, then all of a sudden I'm making work for my crew. So my style is much more to do my job so that they can do theirs. Hire, train, fire if necessary, get out of their way. And then I get to do the administrative tasks, the paperwork that Jeff was talking about earlier. You go in with a heart for, being customer service and being a printing company, and then you have all the paperwork that goes along with it, the administration that goes along with it. That's my job. That might be one of the reasons I like Michelangelo's David so much. Michelangelo listened to the wisdom of the 2 great masters who rejected the stone. But he recognized that though their style was great, it wasn't his. These 2 masters were not wrong. They were worried about stability. They had their own wisdom and experience to know that there was a concern. But he had his own vision. And although he followed some of the same basics, the basics that you have to have in order to sculpt a great work of art, he also had his own style, his own way of building on these basics, and his way worked too. When you think about leadership, as we've had a chance to all day, know that there are some absolutely sound basics. There are some absolute musts. You have to build trust. You have to be trustworthy. You have to respect your crew. You have to be willing to give correction. You have to be willing to receive feedback. Those are musts. Downright essential. But in the end, it's your vision that makes your masterpiece. Servant leadership, listening to those around you, supporting, caring for, having clear direction so people know where to land. I love the analogy of the airplane that's off course 70% of the time, but because it knows its destination, it gets there. That's one of my favorite analogies for leadership. Basics, you have to have the basics. And if you have those basics, your leadership material, but it's your vision. One of my side hobbies is music, and I was recently thinking about the importance of a conductor. And actually, before I go down this road, I want to think about, I'm going to talk more about vision here in a moment. There was bear with me, some of the facts of this story are not completely accurate because I don't quite remember some of the facts. But somewhere in the 40s and 50s, for the first time in known history, the American government of some sort was able to bring over, I believe it was a Tibetan monk. And they were so excited to bring this leader of this not very well understood for us culture over into America and share the best that we had with him. And one of the things that they brought him to experience was, I believe it was like the New York Philharmonic, one of the top orchestras in the world. And they brought him in and they sat him in the prime seats, and he watched this amazing concert. And at the end, the press asked him, what did you think about American music and European music? And the gentleman replied, it was absolutely breathtakingly amazing and beautiful until the guy with the white stick came out. Their warm-up time of all the cacophony of sound to him was absolutely gorgeous. And then when it got orchestrated and conducted, not his style. Your vision matters. Your vision matters. So the conductor, the leader of the orchestra, it's their vision that dictates how the symphony sounds. Just like leadership, there are basics that have to be there in order to make music great. The performers have to know their parts. The conductor has to be familiar with the piece of music, the basics. But once the basics have been met, the vision of the conductor can completely change the effect of the music. So we're going to play around a little bit with a couple of videos. One lady in particular, she was actually asking the same kind of question that I'm posing. What's the difference between leadership styles? And she compared, as she'll describe herself, so I'm not going to do too much talking for her because she's going to say it herself, and we're just going to watch a series of very short snippets of her analyzing two conductors side by side. And they are both absolutely amazing. Whatever your hobby is, think of two superstars in that hobby. And that's what she did. In music, she took Bernstein and I like Bernstein best, and so I always forget the other gentleman's name. Starts with a K. She'll say it in a moment. She took these two amazing conductors and compared the same symphony and had very different results. Go ahead and play the first little bit there.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I have a really fun video. I'm very excited to make this. I'm going to take the same piece of music, which is going to be Brahms' Fourth Symphony, Fourth Movement, and I'm going to show you two different conductors conducting it sort of side by side to try and show you a bit more of what conducting is really about and how the same piece of music conducted by two different people can really sound very different. So I chose two great conductors and two great symphony orchestras so that we're not here comparing who is better because they're both great.
Not here to compare who's better. They're both great. We're comparing styles and visions. Now let's set the stage. She's gonna show the opening of the piece from the very basic job of choosing the speed, the tempo. And for those who are not musicians, think about if your child walks into the room in a dead run, or your child walks into the room calmly, the tempo, the speed in which things happen. It's a different mood.
And here both conductors are really very different. We can talk about this objectively and subjectively. I'm going to start with objectively, the speed. The speed that Cliver decides is significantly faster than the speed that Bernstein decides. Again, not giving opinions until the end. I measured it with my metronome, and Cliver's version, the first one, was around 105 per beat. And Bernstein's version was around 75, so
That's a huge difference.
Significantly slower. And this gives you two very different results, not only obviously because of the speed, but in the aura of the theme, in what we feel about them.
The first one it's exciting and kind of makes you lean in. The second one kind of almost feels like a heavy weight. All they did is change the tempo. A few minutes later, comparing a few different measures side by side, both conductors want drama at this moment, but how they get it is completely different.
So for example, the theme that now comes has two sounds in every bar, 1 and 2. And so we see here with Kleiber that he does not purposely highlight any of both of them. He wants both sounds to be sharp and intense. If we now watch Bernstein, you will see in his gesture and you will hear in the result that he is given more emphasis or more, he wants the second beat to be very aggressive and very sharp. And the first one is a little bit less important in hierarchy. And both of them shape the whole phrase to begin very powerful and very forte and slowly diminish. And I think it is clearer in Bernstein when we see how he starts the second phrase and how he ends it.
Yes, but that's okay. What you'll see then, and do you have any more? There should be, okay, good. And so what you see in that piece is you can see Bernstein starts with this, and by the end of the phrase, he's doing this. Given very clear direction, very, very distinct. And then comes the flute solo. One conductor completely leaves the performer alone and allows the performer to pick the vision. The other one is very specific about how they want it played. And he picks a vision. Both are right. Both are gorgeous.
A conductor can make a lot of difference. Obviously, I'm talking about an orchestra that does not need a conductor to be able to play things. So I'm not talking about a youth orchestra or an amateur orchestra.
Oops, I think we're at the wrong spot.
The difference here is that Kleiber, the first example, really leaves him very alone. He is just simply showing a little inner world within himself of emotion, but he is definitely backing off because he feels that is the best way in that circumstance with that orchestra, with that player, to achieve the most out of that. We then go to Bernstein, and it's quite the opposite. You can see him really managing or showing for every single note what intention he wants the flute player mostly to be doing. So he is actually showing a lot.
The conductor makes a really huge difference. These are two of the top symphonies in the world, led by two of the top conductors, and they have very different sounds, very different feelings. I'll let her part go and wrap it up. And these orchestras have all the technical items solved. It's the vision that makes the difference. Go ahead and do that last bit.
A conductor can make a lot of difference. Obviously, I'm talking about an orchestra that does not need a conductor to be able to play things. So I'm not talking about a youth orchestra or an amateur orchestra or any other context. This is an orchestra that has all of the technical parts solved, and the conductor comes to bring that little extra, and these are two options of results that we get. I didn't even pick the most contrasting ones that I could have. I mostly picked the ones that showed the conductor the most and that were, two revered orchestras and conductors, so that there is no doubt that they are both incredibly amazing, equally amazing. So it's not a matter of levels, it's a matter of visions.
It's a matter of visions. As you sit here and you listen to person after person talk about really good leadership vision or leadership styles and concepts, there are absolute basics that have to be there. But what's your vision when you lead? What's your vision? Once you have this vision and you work with your crew, and if they share your vision, that's a good fit. If they share your vision, if they're willing to work with the training, work with each other, that's going to be a really good fit. Using my conductor analogy, she really enjoys Kleiber. I really enjoy Bernstein. Totally different styles, and it's okay that we have differences of views. And if you're trying to take somebody with your vision and you're trying to make them have your vision, it's kind of like shoving a square peg into a round hole. It isn't going to happen. And it's painful for everyone involved. Now, here's one more very short example of a square peg in a round hole. Think Star Wars. Think Darth Vader. Think the incredible music, deep, dark, hard theme of Darth Vader. Think about how that theme music, that don, 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 think about how that, echoes in your head and what a staple it's been in our country since the 70s, I believe it first came out. All right? This is what would happen if you have the wrong vision with Darth Vader. This particular person put it in a major key, a very happy major key. This would be the round peg in the square hole. It's not so scary anymore. We have to keep listening because there's one spot that's particularly funny. All right, go and stop it. That would be the square peg in a round hole. Needless to say, leadership and vision matters. Like Michelangelo, may you have sound and solid leadership basics with wisdom and experience to guide you. May you have a clear vision of where you want to go and a shared vision that you can interact with your crew on, you can interact with your friends that you're working with on. By the way, I'm going to pause there for a second. You heard earlier a really important thing. I adore my crew. We work together, we enjoy, we laugh, but there is a healthy barrier that has to be in place too. Tom Bartels was my board president when the CEO role passed from Samantha Kirstein, my mother, to myself. And at our very first board retreat, I'd been in my role for 3 months or something, and at my very first board retreat, my board president, Tom Bartels, said, "Ann, your job is to protect this organization." And for 10 years, that's been the foundational lens that I look through. So I adore my crew, and I enjoy them very much. I look forward to going to work every day. We look forward to working together. I love telling them stories about how, this is what I'm seeing on the street. This is the impact you're having. I love showing you what you're doing. But at the end of the day, if I have to make a tough decision, it is my job to protect the organization. So you've heard a lot of really, really good things stated by those who came before me today. So when I say, may you have a clear vision of where you want to go, I mean it. And may you take whatever it is you're given, in whatever condition it's in, and draw out its incredible beauty. That's leadership.
All right. Do we have any questions? I don't know that I got any. Let's see here. Any questions? Anybody want to shout one out?
Right? Put a sock in it.
Bo was clapping during that story. I don't know. I don't know about that story.
You asked a fun question earlier of Jeff and Nicole.
Yeah.
I'm actually my husband's boss, technically. But I will tell you, at home, he is the head of our household. So, there you go.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, thank Ann. Let's give her a hand again. Thank you. So I do thank you for coming. I'm always impressed with folks that will give up a Saturday and come do this, but and just really do appreciate all those who came and shared their wisdom. Hopefully, maybe you made a connection. And like I said, I don't think all the wisdom's on the stage. I think a lot of it's out there. And I hope you will share that and build those relationships so that you have others to call when you hit those leadership bumps, those times you have to navigate. And I don't know what hits you, but I would just encourage you as you go home, maybe process this with somebody or a mentor or your spouse or just in your own thinking. If you took some notes, go back through and what really hits you. Maybe when one of the speakers said, be available to do what needs to be done and lead by example. There are always other duties as assigned. Boy, that line, a lot of us have to do all that, right? Or delegation. We heard that kind of said in different ways, that you have to let some stuff go and actually let people do it. Heard things like provide actionable feedback when there is an issue. We need to be people who actually give feedback that's helpful, that there's real candor there, real honesty. People appreciate being recognized for their contribution. We heard that, you do need to correct. You must correct. There are times we have to do that. And vision, I think vision is such a powerful thing. I particularly love and enjoy entrepreneurial leaders. My wife and I started this church from scratch. We felt like God called us to do that 20 years ago. And we just came up in a minivan with our 4 kids at the time. We have a 5th child now because we'll do anything to grow church. But anyway, and so, it's just, we had a vision. We just felt like we were called to do something. And, so I commend you, whether you're called to do something in a particular department as part of a bigger vision of an organization, whether you're called to start something, whether it's a ministry, a business, whatever it might be, I just encourage you to embrace the risk, step out, try to have a community around you of those that can help you, support you, challenge you, and move forward and do what you're supposed to do. So thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And like I said, on the way out, if you want to give to the food bank, you can talk to Ann, or there's a little computer out there on the welcome desk. If you want one of those free books that just tells some of the God stories of people here at Journey, there's 40 different stories. Kind of think, Chicken Soup for the Soul. If you want one of those books, feel free to take that. That's our gift to you. But just thanks for coming. I appreciate it. So have a great evening. Talk to you later.